Good morning, everyone. My name is Pedro Alvarez. I'm recruitment officer at the IAEA, and I will be facilitating this session on the overview of the recruitment process at the IAEA together with my colleague Jacqueline Malapitan. So welcome, everyone. Let's get the session started. So Jack, if you want to introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jack Malapitan. I'm a recruitment officer as well at the agency, been doing recruitment for international development for 9 years, and I look forward to having a meaningful discussion with everyone later.
Thank you. So before we start with the presentation in itself, I would like to cover some basic rules that or basic instructions so that we can actually make these a meaningful and a productive experience for everyone. So at the end of the presentation, you will be given the chance to ask any questions, and some of the panelists will answer depending on the subject of your question. So as you can see at the right-hand side of your screen, at the bottom, you have a question and answer functionality, a Q&A functionality. So please use this tool to send questions at the end of the event. Yeah. As we have a large audience, you're all muted as you join the session. Yeah. So please keep it like this, and in this manner we will actually avoid interruptions and disturbing with the noise. Yeah. Also, for the optimal quality of your audio, it would be better if you use a headset. Yeah. And finally, the workshop is recorded and will be made available to everyone. I would also like to remind you that at the end of the presentation, the survey will be emailed to all of you. So this is the first time we're carrying out these kind of sessions over WebEx online. So we welcome any feedback that you may have or any suggestions on how to improve the presentations of the sessions online. Yeah. So let's get the session started. So the session today is about the recruitment process, to give you an overview of the recruitment process at IAEA. So the recruitment process, like in many other international organizations, it's a very competitive one, and there is a heavy administrative process that is happening along the way. So this may lead to longer timelines, so a longer period to be completed. Yeah, maybe a little bit longer than it would be expected in the private sector, for instance. Yeah. So we try to recruit from a diverse qualified pool of candidates globally, and multiple stakeholders need to endorse this selection. So this is the reason why it may take longer. Candidates only receive a status update once the process is completed. So we do not give any information about the status of any recruitment until it is actually completed. So this may take a few months. So if you decide to apply to one of our vacancies, you will need to be patient. Yeah. So what you see on the slide is what we call our recruitment funnel. So today we will go over each step in more detail. And if you want to know a little bit more about these steps, you can also refer. We will actually cover these at the end of the session. You can refer to our webinars. Yeah. So each of the bubbles showed in this slide have a corresponding webinar available in our career webpage. So let's go to the next slide. Okay. And I'm passing the floor now to Jack.
All right, so the first step of the application process is the application review. And in this stage, usually our job openings are open for 4 weeks. Kay, if you could kindly move to the next slide, please. So usually our job openings are open for 4 weeks for professional, And excuse me, Pedro, could you mute your computer? So usually our job openings are open for 4 weeks for professional and general service posts. Deadlines may vary, however, so always make sure that if you find a position that you're very interested in, you take a look at the actual deadline for that position. So once you have submitted your application, what happens next? The first step in our recruitment process is called the application review. During this step, the hiring managers will review all the applications received through our online application portal. The managers will assess the applications by looking if the education, qualifications, experience, and required skills and expertise of the applicant match the vacancy. Keep in mind that, as mentioned by Pedro, only candidates who are selected for the next step will be contacted. Also, we only accept applications via our application portal. Next slide. So the competition is quite fierce at the beginning, where you are competing with hundreds of applicants, and you want to make sure that your application stands out from the rest. So this is a typical journey of candidates that apply to the IAEA. For example, when we receive 110 candidates, only 9.7% get shortlisted, and 8% move on to the testing stage, 5.2% move to the interview panel stage, and 1% get an offer. So we will go through each of the steps in the next slides. Next slide, please, Kate. So here's the application checklist. So this is a competitive process, so make sure you follow the checklist so that your application will stand out from the rest. So make sure that you plan your application in advance. Dedicate time to study and understand the vacancy. Also, please review your profile in relation to the vacancy and complete all sections appropriately in the application. Also, you would need to outline your responsibilities in your own words in a concise and simple manner. And make sure that it's easy for recruiters and hiring managers to find the right information that they need. So also prepare a professionally drafted motivation letter. And in this letter, it would be good to check how your background fits well with the position that you're applying for, and make sure that it's really tailored to the job that you're applying to. So take time to also respond to the filter questions that we have for each application. Okay, and then over to Pedro now for the written test.
Thank you, Jack. Yeah, so we're going back to the funnel. It is maybe important to underline, as you saw 2 slides ago, that it's very, very important that you invest yourself a lot in the cover letter and also in the application process, because this is where the competition is really harder, like really more strong, because as Jack just mentioned, only, let's say, 9% of the initial total candidates get shortlisted for the next step. So it's very important that your application is really impeccable, like your cover letter is really very professional and very good. So let's move one step further. So the application review is over. The application review is carried out by the hiring department and also reviewed by MTHR, so human resources. Once this is done, a short list of candidates is approved, and then the process moves forward. So the next step is either a written technical assessment or an asynchronous video assessment. Yeah, we have a software called Recruiter for the asynchronous video assessment, and the written technical assessment is a written test that is actually carried out, is administered over the email. Yeah. So also important that these 2 steps, the written technical test and the asynchronous video assessment, they are not compulsory steps. So they may be put into place because they help us shorten the shortlist, and is also helpful to assess candidate skills and competencies, but they're not compulsory. So it may very well be that if you apply for a job and you're shortlisted, you go directly to the panel interview, who is the next compulsory step. Yeah. So depending on the vacancy, these steps are put into place or not. Yeah. So let's look a little bit in detail on the written technical test. Yeah. So the technical tests are position specific. So that means that they're linked. So usually they're meant to test your knowledge and expertise specific for the function you're applying for. Yeah? They are conducted online. So usually you get an invitation first over the email, and then you get the test over the email, and you have to send it back within a limited allocated time. Yeah. We are in the process of exploring the possibility of an online proctoring system, but at the moment we do not have it functional, but it will be ready very, very soon. So, as I said, the written assessment is time limited. So once you receive it at the agreed date and time, you will have a limited time to complete it. So it's sometimes 2 hours, 3 hours, depending on the complexity of the test. Yeah. And they can be composed of a variety of question types. It can be multiple choice questions. They can be scenario based questions. They can be essay type. So the case study. They can be very, very different, but always linked to the position, to the specific positions that you have applied for. The tests are reviewed by hiring managers and at least 2 subject matter experts. So the tests are administered also anonymously. So you are not allowed to give any indication of your identity when you are taking one of these tests. And this is to ensure the objectivity and preserve the integrity of the whole process, to make sure that it's a fair procedure for everyone. Yeah. Yep. So why do we use written technical assessments? So basically, it's just to verify candidates' technical expertise in relation to the responsibilities of the post. As I said, this allows us to shorten the shortlist, for instance, or have a better insight on some of the candidates' specific technical expertise or drafting skills, or these kind of competencies. Also, it's a good way to. It's also a good way to determine if a candidate would actually be able to perform well in the job. Yeah. So it also increases the reliability and validity of the selection process. As I said, they're administered anonymously, but this is a pretty solid procedure, and also assessed by 2 independent subject matter experts who do not know of the assessment of the other, and then we match both assessments. And like this, we avoid any bias linked to the process. Yeah. So the next step is the asynchronous video assessment, and my colleague Jack will run you through this process.
Okay, thanks, Pedro. So as mentioned by Pedro, this step is not a compulsory step in the process, and it's only conducted when the hiring manager confirms that this step can add value to the recruitment process. So sometimes this is also administered if we have a lot of people who have applied to the post. So it's a good way for us to screen, not just basing the decision on the resumes of the candidates. So for the next slide, so what is an asynchronous video assessment? So an asynchronous interview is when the interviewer and interviewee are not online at the same time. So for example, we would send you an email invitation to the asynchronous video interview, and video assessment and give you several days to complete it. So you can go online and complete it anytime within that duration. So for a synchronous interview, it is when the interviewer and interviewee are online at the same time. So for the purposes of the initial candidate screening, we use asynchronous interview technology, and we only use synchronous interviews at later stages of the recruitment process. This is also called the panel interview. So what exactly is an asynchronous video assessment? It is a type of interview you complete by yourself at a time and place that suits you. You will need a compatible device, such as a computer, laptop, smartphone, or tablet, equipped with a webcam and a microphone. So the standard questions are created in advance by the hiring manager, and a deadline for completion is set. Candidates will receive an email with an invitation to the assessment, plus other information regarding this step of the process. So the email would contain important information, such as how to reach technical support in case of issues. So please make sure that you take your time to read the email carefully. We're also in the process of creating a test link so that candidates can also do a test interview prior to conducting the asynchronous video assessment. Okay. So in this slide, we will share a collection of numbers that illustrate the video screening process in greater detail. So in general, we will ask about 5 questions in total. You will be given a question and you will have approximately 1 to 2 minutes to read the question and prepare an answer. So it's not very different from having a Skype conversation in which you are looking at the camera instead of a screen. After the preparation time, you will have about 3 minutes to answer the question. So depending on the complexity of the question, the length of time may vary. So finally, in terms of deadline, you will be given about 7 calendar days to complete the interview after you receive an invitation email. If you want to know more about how best to prepare for an asynchronous video interview, please watch our past webinar recording on the pre-screening process at the IAEA. Okay, Pedro?
Thank you, Jack. So very important. I mean, this is quite a succinct overview of the whole process. And it's very important to reiterate here that for each of these steps, there are dedicated webinars that are explaining in detail each of the steps and giving valuable tips. So it's important that if you're applying, that you prepare well using this webinar. So the next step of the process is the panel interview. So the panel interview, as we said, is compulsory. It's a compulsory step and is only candidates who passed all the pre-screening methods. So all the previous methods are invited for a panel interview. So how are interviews set up? Yeah. So nearly all of our interviews are conducted via video conference platform. So either WebEx or a different one. And this is because of the flexibility it offers for both the candidate and the hiring panel. Yeah, we don't need to travel people, or we do not need to use resources. It's better for everyone's availability. So as a candidate, it is important to ensure that you have a good internet connection. And please note that even if you experience difficulties during the interview, there is always a technician overview in the process. And our colleagues in audiovisual, they're very, very helpful. If there are any issues, if there are any hiccups or problems, they're really very efficient, and they can sort it out really fast. Yeah. So usually you are invited to test the video conference equipment, so your computer, your camera, your microphone prior to the interview. So it's a good tip just to make sure to do this, to test your equipment properly, to make sure that the internet connection in the exact location you're going to conduct the interview using the exact same equipment works perfectly, to avoid any technical issues. Yeah, is also to connect before the scheduled start of the interview, also to allow a little bit of time if you have any problems to allow to solve them without having to be stressed, and this may impact also on your performance during the interview. Yeah. Usually our interviews are scheduled to last around 45 minutes to 1 hour, and as an average, an interview has between 7 and 9 to 10 questions. Yeah. So the minimum number of interviewers is 3, but very often is 4, 5, or even more than 5. Yeah. The panel consists of the hiring manager, who is chairing the interview process, and most likely there will be also a technical expert for the subject matter of the vacancy, who assesses and advises on the technical abilities of the candidate. Yeah. There is also always a member of the Human Resources Division representing the division in the panel and making sure that the interviews are conducted in accordance to the rules and procedures, and that the candidates are being equally and fairly treated. Yeah. At the end, you are provided with some HR administrative matters or explanation on some administrative issues, and also you're always, or candidates are always invited to ask any questions to the panel, or to add any information that hasn't been covered during the interview, and that they feel it's important to add for the assessment of the applications. So at the IAEA, exactly the same as in the UN system and in many other international organizations and some private sector organizations, we use competency-based questions and competency-based interviewing technique. Yeah. So we will go into more details about what it means in the next slide. So what is the IAEA competency framework? Yeah. So these frameworks usually is a system that broadly describes performance excellence within an organization. The competency frameworks are used throughout the United Nations systems, as well as in many other government, private sector, and public sector organizations. So the IAEA competency framework includes 3 main components. Yeah? So the components are the core values, which are principles that influence people's actions and choices they make. Yeah? The core values of the United Nations family are integrity, professionalism, and respect for diversity. Then we have the core competencies. The core competencies are the foundation of the framework. They describe behaviors and allow us to have a common definition of performance excellence. The core competencies of the IAEA are planning and organizing, teamwork, communication, and achieving results. And finally, we have what we call functional competencies. Those are defined by duties and responsibilities assumed by staff members for a given job. Competencies are a combination of skills, knowledge, and attributes and behaviors that enable an individual to perform a task or activity successfully within a given job. Competencies are observable behaviors that can be measured and evaluated, and thus are essential in terms of defining job requirements and recruiting, training, and developing staff. So why do we use this competency framework? Yeah, it's very simple. It's because it provides a clear shared understanding of the behaviors to be exhibited and the levels of performance expected. And in addition, it provides also an alignment of staff skills, capabilities, and knowledge within the organization's priorities. So how do we evaluate these competencies? So these competencies are evaluated through open-ended behavioral-based questions during the panel interviews. So by gathering evidence of how you have performed a task in the past, and how would you transfer those skills and experiences into the new role, allows us to predict with quite a degree of certainty how you would behave, how you would perform in the future role. Yeah. So it's very critical that you provide examples when you answer these questions during the interview. So it's very, very important that you actually answer the questions, provide an example of how you have actually performed these duties in the past. So how can you prepare for the competency-based interview? So interview time is very limited. So try to respond in a straightforward and concise manner. You can use interviewing methods such as the STAR method. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but we can cover it succinctly at the end of this slide. It's basically a method to provide a complete reply to any of the interview questions. So it's a way also to order your thoughts and to help you formulate your answers in a better manner. So the STAR method, it's a methodology that normally you start explaining the context, the situation where a past experience happened. You explain the task. T stands for task, so which is the duty or your what you needed to do. A stands for actions, which is actually what you actually did. What were your reaction? What did you do in order to perform the task? The first R stands for results, and it's exactly what was the outcome of the whole situation, and what was the end result of the situation. And then the second R stands for reflection, which means what learnings have you achieved through this process? Would you do something different in the future if you had to do the same again? Yeah? So it's important that you prepare and practice as much as you can. That's really, really important. A starting point for preparing is to learn about the organization and about the job from the vacancy notice. So all of our vacancy notices are structured in the same manner. First, you have a context where the position is located, and then a description of responsibilities. Yeah? So working for the IAEA means working as an international civil servant. Yeah? So you really should familiarize yourself with the International Civil Service Commission's Code of Conduct, because these are really, this is our, let's say, the basis for our performance. And you can find a copy of the standards of conduct for the International Civil Service also in our career webpage. So you can find a copy there. Yeah. Please make sure that you review also your application in order to spot some real life examples from your previous experience that may help you address the responsibilities that are listed on the vacancy notice for the position you are applying for. So like this, you would be prepared, you would have already some examples ready, some examples ready, and would be easier for you to identify some examples when you're asked to provide one. Yeah. Again, the more you practice, the more you will feel comfortable, and the better you will do in this step. It's very, very important that you practice, that you use friends or colleagues or even some members of your family, and you try to practice, but try to anticipate any other questions and practice as much as you can. So again, if you would like to learn more about this step, please go to the corresponding webinar in our career webpage. Yeah, so there is a whole webinar, a whole session of a little bit longer than 1 hour, specifically on how to prepare for a competency-based interview. So we would like to encourage you to do that and check our webinars online. Yeah. So let's go to the next step of the selection procedure, also a non-compulsory step, and my colleague Jack will run you through it.
Okay, so now we have seen the step of the written technical test the asynchronous video pre-screening, and the panel interview. Let's move to the next step of the process, which is the psychometric and leadership skills assessment. So as mentioned by Pedro, this step is not compulsory and mostly conducted at senior level and for managerial positions. So the psychometric leadership assessment, it measures the candidate's suitability for positions based on required personality characteristics and cognitive abilities. So the assessments are carried out after the panel interview, and it's usually just the top candidates who are invited for the psychometric leadership assessment. This method is used to ensure that candidates are well matched to the advertised positions. So psychometric tests are a standard and scientific method used to evaluate individuals' leadership and behavioral style. They identify the extent to which the candidate's personality and cognitive abilities match those required to perform the role. So the tests are administered over the phone and through an online platform. Okay, and Pedro, do you want to do the next one, please? Hello, Pedro.
Apologies, I forgot to
Okay.
unmute. Okay, thank you. Yes, just to reiterate, thank you, Jack. Just to reiterate that these psychometric and leadership assessments are also a non-compulsory step of the selection procedure, and they're targeting functions with a strong leadership component or with specific functions that require, let's say, a higher level of a specific skill, like for instance, our colleagues in the Incident and Emergency Center, which are subject to probably a higher amount of stress than the rest of us. Yeah. So background checks. Yeah. So once the selection process is completed, what we conduct a background check on some of the selection procedure, on some of the interviewed candidates. So we contact some of the interviewed candidates and we require the names of current and previous supervisors, and we ask for permission to contact them in order to get a reference from this candidate. So that's also important to take into account that it will be conducted. So after this is done, then we have to draft the report with the recommendation. So this is the next slide. So we draft the report with the recommendation, and this recommendation needs to be endorsed at different levels. So first, where in the hiring division and the hiring department where the position is located. So all the chain of command there. Then it goes to what we call a review board, a joint advisory panel for professional positions. And this advisory panel reviews that the process has been carried out properly, and also add comments if needed. And then after the joint advisory panel for professional positions has provided any comment, the case is forwarded for decision to the selecting authority, which is usually our DG or the Deputy Director General for Management. So during this recommendation, the information, which is next slide. During this recommendation, all the information provided by the candidate is reviewed carefully. So we are actually reviewing not only the information gathered in the interview, but also in the application, the information contained in the application, in Recruiter, and also in the written assessment and the psychometric and leadership skills assessment if they have been taking place. Yeah. So all this is taken into consideration, is reviewed carefully to put forward this recommendation. One of the principles guiding the panel and the selecting authority is to consider the recruitment that secures employees of the high standards of efficiency, technical competence, and integrity. It's also important to mention here that we try to have a diverse workforce. So we give due regard to geographical representation and also take into consideration the General Conference resolutions on asserting the target of equal representation of women. We are mindful that we are a technical organization. In this technical area, there is actually, even if women have played a very important role in the developing radioactive science and techniques, they are still underrepresented in the industry and also in our organization. So we're working towards ensuring equal representation of women in the organization. So in the next slide, you can. We will actually run you through how or where you can find us in our career page, and Jack is going to take care of that.
Okay, for everyone interested in working for the IAEA, this page is a great starting point to find out more. Our employment webpage houses all the information you would need to find out more about working at the IAEA, applicant resources, and as well as our current vacancies. So it's www.iaeea.org/employment. So in the next slide, we also have information about US-sponsored opportunities. So to browse US-sponsored opportunities, such as for JPOs, cost-free experts, consultancies, and internships, please head to international.anl.gov for non-safeguards positions and bnl.gov/ISPO for opportunities in safeguards. So more information on the application process can be found on these websites as well. Okay, and then Pedro.
Thank you. So yeah, and you're also welcome to connect with us. We're actually very active in LinkedIn. We have all of us have LinkedIn profiles, so you're welcome to send us a connection invitation. We share vacancies. We use LinkedIn a lot as an outreach tool. Yeah, so we use LinkedIn actually to reach broader audiences and make sure that our vacancies are as spread as possible. Yeah, we also issue a monthly newsletter that sends candidates who register in this distribution list a summary of all the ongoing vacancies. So that's, if you're interested in joining this distribution list, you can do it in the link that is shown in the slide, on the slide now. Finally, again, our webinars. So we are actually we're trying to promote that as much as possible, and really it is a great resource. So as I said, as we have said in several locations, there are webinars for each and every step of the selection procedure, and this is actually very useful to understand the procedure, to prepare for it, and you will actually receive a lot of good tips about it. So please make sure that you go to our career webpage and that you check our webinars there if you're selected or if you're interested in applying. Yeah? And I think this covers all of the presentation, so maybe we can pass to the question and answers stage. We already received one question. We have a question from David. So has the COVID-19 pandemic slowed down the selection process? So even if we have tried to maintain the level of production, of course, because this has had an impact in the whole organization, some people at the beginning especially, they were not even able to work online. So I must say that it has had a little an impact. Yeah, so we haven't stopped working, not a single day, but yeah, things have been probably a little bit slowed down. But we are now back at full speed in the office. So yeah, again, the process takes very, very long sometimes, as for the reasons we explained in the past at the beginning of the presentation. So please be patient, and you will receive information the moment we are entitled to make it available to candidates. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Okay, so we have one question on the apply for pipelines on the employment webs. Okay, so this you can also find in on our career webpage that we have this possibility to apply for a pipeline. Yeah, so the reason why we have put that in place is just to be able to have a group, or let's say a database of candidates who are interested in a specific area. Yeah, I must say that this project was started even before I joined the IAEA, and even before the head of recruitment joined the IAEA. And in all honesty, we're using this in a very limited manner. Yeah, but the use is simply you apply. If there is an opportunity, for instance, short term or consultancy or any type of appointment that may be available, then we may contact you, and then yeah, check if you would be interested in one of these opportunities. But as I said, we're not using that a lot. So if it's actually you have higher chances to get a job applying for a proper normal vacancy than applying for a pipeline. So my advice would be to use the current vacancies. Yeah. We have another question.
Background checks. Maybe I can take that one.
Yes,
Pedro?
sure. Go ahead. So
Okay, so there's a question from John about during the discussion of background checks, you mentioned that current and past supervisors will be contacted. However, how are the references we provide in the application used? Okay, so for candidates that will undergo background check, we first contact you to make sure that the list of referees are updated. So if you need to change any of the names listed in your application, that's the point where you can confirm with us if we can contact the following people. And you can also provide updated contact details because as Pedro mentioned, the application process, the recruitment process takes time. So things may also change during the course of your application, and referees' contact details may also change. So at that point, you can let us know what's the updated contact details and which referees we can contact for you. Okay.
Okay, thank you. We also have a question on the, thank you, Jacqueline and Pedro. Is the United States an underrepresented country at the IAEA? And how do you measure diversity regarding race, ethnic background? Yeah, so I can take that question. Yes, the USA is underrepresented currently in the IAEA. So you're more than welcome to submit your applications and to run through the process. Yeah, and we do not take into consideration any ethnic or race backgrounds. The only consideration taken, and I believe the UN is exactly the same, is nationality. So this is not at the point right now. It's not taken into consideration at all. It's only nationalities. Okay.
Okay, and then we received another question. Are tests required for non-technical positions as well as technical positions? I would say yes, because it is a means for us to also screen candidates. As mentioned during the presentation, some are based on case studies as well. And we also have multiple choice questions based on knowledge about specific technical areas. and also situational, as I mentioned, case study. So yes, it's for all types of positions at the agency.
Okay, so we also have a question from Brett. Do you have any targets or quotas for country representation or geographical diversity? No, we do not have that. The United Nations have it's more strict. They have a more strict procedure to enforce the quotas depending on the contributions of each country. But for us, we just monitor that to ensure a diverse workforce and also a balanced representation of all member states. But it's not compulsory. It's not as strong as in the United Nations. So we do monitor that. We try our best to ensure a diversity of nationalities represented. But let's say we do not stop, for instance, the appointment of a candidate because his or her country is overrepresented, for instance. I hope that answers your question. Yeah. You want to take the next one, Jack?
Okay, because I'm seeing questions from the Q&A box, Pedro, as well as the chat box above.
Okay, I'm checking only Q&A.
Let me just see the next one. On the average, how long does the recruitment process take? So for this one, I would say it really depends on the hiring division as well, because from the recruitment side, pretty much we have targets in terms of how fast we need to do certain parts of the process. For example, endorsement, we usually do that within 3 days, and then we usually make sure that things progress quickly. But of course, there are other factors involved in terms of how busy the hiring division is. So sometimes they don't send us all the things we need right away. And because the panel interviews are also trying, we also try to schedule 5 panel members, and trying to find a common schedule for all sometimes can be quite challenging. So I would say fastest would be 3 months, and then some positions may take longer depending on availability of all the stakeholders in the process as well. However, after we have the panel interviews, usually the approval process for each post would be about 10 weeks, because we have several processes after that, and several people who will be approving the recommendation, the recruitment recommendation, as well as a joint advisory panel, which checks if the recruitment process was done fairly. Then that takes about 10 weeks to be wrapped up. So we just make sure that we have all the checks and balances in the whole process to ensure fairness in the whole recruitment process as well. Okay, Pedro?
Thank you, Jack. Maybe it's also important to underline that we try to forecast recruitment as much as possible. So we initiate the moment we have confirmation, or we plan a vacancy, that the vacancy is going to happen, let's say, in a year. So at least 12 months in advance, we launch the process. So that's also, we still also have a long time to produce the answer. So that's something also that needs to be taken into consideration. Okay, so yes, so we have a question here. Is there a mechanism for requesting feedback on an application if I'm not selected? So unfortunately not. Only internal candidates have the right, in accordance to our rules and procedures, to request for feedback. We cannot, it would be just physically impossible to provide feedback to all internal candidates who require it. It's just impossible. So it's not possible as an external candidate. Yeah.
Okay, there's also a question here. How does IAEA balance? This is from Juan. Hiring for very specific technical positions with limited applicants versus a more general pool of broad expertise applicants that may also contribute. So for recruitment at the IAEA, you really have to take a close look at the requirements posted for each vacancy. So we make sure that only candidates who have all the required expertise are recruited for roles. So it will be very hard to get in a very technical position if you don't have the technical knowledge required for that position. I would recommend to really just apply to positions that match your background, because as the application is also very competitive, you would need to check if you really fit the requirements of the post. Of course, we also list what assets would be good to have, but we just base the pre-screening on the requirements listed in each vacancy. So this is really very strictly checked at the agency. So we make sure that we are being very fair and transparent in the process as well.
Okay, so we have another question here. Are there opportunities to work 100% remotely from the USA for technical engineering staff while COVID is ongoing? So during these past 3 months, we have facilitated working from home arrangements, not only for staff in Vienna or in the different locations where the IAEA has an office, but also to those candidates who were meant to arrive, but they were not able to do so because of the COVID-19 crisis. But right now, as long we're fully staffed, we're fully back in the office in Austria. Austria is also a country who has handled the pandemic very, very well, and the cases are really, really low. We have had, for the population of the country, the death rate is really very low. We have also excellent health care providers and resources, hospitals, and so really, as long as there are no restrictions on your country or on the side of your country or on the side of Austria to join the IAEA here in headquarters, unfortunately, you cannot just remain in the USA working 100% for us. You need to report for duty in headquarters here. Okay.
Okay, I have another question.
Yes.
I don't know who asked this because it was forwarded by Kay. Since this process requires a recommendation or reference check from our current supervisor, does the candidate have a conditional offer at that point before informing a current supervisor that they have applied for a new job? Is there any guarantee of an offer at that point contingent on a positive reference? Thank you for the great session today. You're welcome for the great session, but so we actually conduct reference checks, not just for one candidate. So most likely, if you've reached the panel interview stage, your referees will be contacted. So it's not an assurance that you are the chosen candidate for the post. No selection has been made yet at that point. And it is just a way for us to also make sure that we complete your profile and we have all the referees. It is not a requirement that you submit your current supervisor. We do understand that there are sensitivities with regards to applying to a new job. So you can submit former supervisors. And we also make sure that if you tell us not to contact your current supervisor, we don't contact them. What you can do is you may also, maybe I can share for my case, what I did is I provided the names of my previous supervisors. And then I also mentioned to the recruitment staff who was in touch with me when I was applying that you may only contact my current supervisor if you are sure that I'm the selected person. So they didn't contact my current supervisor and only all my previous supervisors. All right, Pedro?
Okay, so we have a question here. I've noticed that vacancy notices are sometimes extended. Is there a particular reason for that? Do I need to reapply? So there are many reasons for that. It may be that, for instance, when it reaches the selection stage, so the decision stage, maybe we are asked to find a broader pool of candidates, or it may be that after interview, yeah, no one of the candidates were convincing. It may be that maybe many reasons. Yeah. So every time we extend a deadline, we clearly indicate that candidates who have applied already do not need to reapply. So usually you don't need to reapply if you have applied already. So it should be your application is taken into consideration already. So so that's basically it. Also, you have to understand that some of our vacancies are highly technical, and sometimes we do not receive. It's really very difficult to source the right caliber and the right type of candidate. So sometimes we have to do very active outreach, very active sourcing, and sometimes 4 weeks is just not enough for that. So we just extend the deadline just to be able to do more sourcing and more outreach. Share our vacancy with certain organizations, or even publish in a specialized press, for instance. So that may be one of the reasons. Yeah, very often we extend deadlines because the process to advertise our vacancies in a specialized press, it takes a while, and then just to make sure that both deadlines in the specialized press and in our webpage are aligned, so we extend the deadline. So maybe many reasons. Yeah, I hope that answers your question. Okay.
Okay, we have a question from Paige. Is there a minimum amount of time someone is notified before they are expected to move to Vienna? So not all our positions are based in Vienna, by the way. We have other locations as well. But during the interview, if you are selected for a panel interview, we also ask the candidates about their notice period, just so we also know what to expect should they be the selected person. But of course, we understand that moving to a different country takes a lot of time logistically, and also if you have a family. So we usually coordinate closely with the candidates on when they are able to move. So I would say we are pretty flexible with that, to make sure that you have a successful move to Vienna or to any other location of IAEA. Pedro?
Okay. Uh, is there any other questions I can?
I see some other questions from Michael. Most positions I've seen advertise list English as required, but other IAEA languages as an asset. How significant are multiple languages, and is there any preference? I think from my experience, additional languages become an advantage to the candidate, especially for positions in handling clients in particular regions. So those languages are helpful in terms of liaising with the stakeholders there. So if you're assigned to Francophone speaking countries, then French would be very ideal for that position. Pedro, you want to add to that?
Yeah, so it's really not determinant. It's not going to be, if you have more than one language, it's always an advantage. But the working language at IAEA is English. And maybe, for instance, colleagues in technical cooperation who have to deal, for instance, with Latin America. So of course, Spanish would be an asset. But as I said, it's actually not determinant. It's always really a nice to have, but not a must have. But it's always good if you have a background, or if you have had the chance to study several languages, then it's always beneficial.
Okay, how does HR view when an applicant applies to the same type of job a few times over the years? I don't think it's a problem.
No,
It might
it's
even
not a
be to your
problem.
advantage, because if you get selected for an interview, even if you don't get it the first time, at least you would have an idea how the process goes and what types of questions are asked, and it might be a good practice also for you to refine your application for the next ones. We have worked in recruitment. I've seen where candidates apply to the same type of jobs and get the job after 2 years of constantly trying. So I think it can only help you. I mean, from the recruitment standpoint, we don't see it as a negative if you keep applying. It just means that you're very eager to join the organization.
Yeah, it's not, certainly we don't take it as something negative, but if, as an advice, if you have applied, I don't know, 10 times and you haven't been successful in any of the 10, so the chances are really very low that if you apply 15 times, you're going to get it. So just do a little bit of reflection, check your application, see where the shortcomings may be. I would advise to reflect on that, check a little bit, evaluate your application, and maybe prepare better, and read very carefully the vacancy notice, and see if there is anything that you could add to your application that would actually push you to the next stage of the process. Yeah. Yeah, we have a question from Bonnie. So what do people normally do if they own a house? Do they sell before coming to Vienna, or do they rent? It's really, that's really it's a personal decision. I would not advise you to cut any ties with your home place, because you need to understand that our positions are temporary in nature. So the IAEA is a non-career organization, and we can only guarantee a limited number of service within the agency. So of course, afterwards, there is always a possibility to apply for other organizations, either in the UN system or in Vienna or or also in Europe or somewhere else. But the agency only ensures, of course, if your performance is right and all the conditions are met and the funds are available and all that, only allows us to complete 7 years of continuous service. So this is something that we need to take into consideration in order to make such decisions. Yeah. Okay. Are there any other questions?
I think we still have some more, Pedro. Can you please expand on the other duty stations? Okay, we actually have regional safeguard offices in Toronto and Tokyo, 2 liaison offices in New York City, Geneva, and we also have laboratories and research centers in Cybersdorf and in Monaco.
Mhm.
Yeah, so some of the positions are in other, are actually outside Vienna. And then Pedro, do you want to take this one? Do you use rosters, talent pools of pre-selected candidates?
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I'll take this one. We do not use rosters of pre-selected candidates yet. This is an idea that has been raised again in several locations recently, and we are considering it. But for the moment, we're not using rosters of pre-selected candidates. Sometimes what we do is, if there is more than one candidate recommended for selection, for instance, if there is a list of 5 candidates recommended for selection, what we do is to, if there is a vacancy notice arising in the next 12 months, then we can actually suggest to appoint one of these candidates in the list. But that's the only way we use a roster at this point in time. Yeah?
Okay, and then a question from Lakshan. How does one know if they are still in the consideration pool in the case that an application deadline is extended? So all candidates who have applied within the initial deadline are always under consideration, even if a position is extended. So we just use the extension to increase diversity in the applications that we receive, as mentioned, because we also are very considerate about gender, also geographical representation. So we make sure that we have enough of that diversity there. So everyone who has applied from the start of the vacancy publication is still under consideration, even if an application deadline is extended. Pedro, there's another one. How different or not is the process for other types of employment, such as CFE or consultants?
Yeah, so we have, it is different. So the most complete and formal one is our fully competitive recruitment for fixed term positions. So for the other types of appointments, the recruitment process is a little bit more informal. So maybe it's just an informal interview or a simple test with the hiring manager, or even, yeah, you're just contacted with a simple exchange of emails, and they can actually offer you some kind of engagement. But this is really, there are not so many cases like this. So it's usually recruitment is done via vacancies.
Okay, we have a question from Lakshman. How much time approximately between application and written test? So this varies a lot because it depends, number one, when the written test would be administered, and number two, on how fast the hiring managers also work. So we have hiring managers who, upon the job closing, would send you the short list the next day. We have others who may take a little bit longer to sift through the applicant pool and select their top candidates. Also, written test, since this is not a compulsory part of the process, it can happen at the beginning, as Pedro mentioned, or I also have experience where we use it at the end of the process after the panel interview to also further assess the technical capability of the top candidates. So it can vary depending on when it will be used and when and how fast the hiring managers also work. All right. Pedro, okay, let me see. The next one. Are you given notice if you have not made it to the next stage of the recruitment process? Pedro, you want to take that one?
I can answer that. No, we do not give any information until the end of the process, until somebody is appointed. So if you are running, if you are actually a candidate for a selection procedure, you need to wait until the end, until the process is completed, to know from us if you have been successful or not. And but I want to I want to make sure that you understand that every candidate receives a notification in writing, a formal notification about the outcome of their application. So eventually you will receive it.
Okay, from Gordana, are we allowed to apply to another UN agency after 7 years at the IAEA, or is the rule of 7-year service applicable to all UN agencies? So the 7 years is only applicable to the IAEA. You may move to other UN agencies after that. And you may also reapply back to the IAEA after a 1-year break in service to restart your new 7 years in service. But you would have to apply just like any other external candidate and go through the whole process. Pedro, you want to take this one. Is the newsletter the best way to remain apprised of vacancies? From Michael.
It is a good way. Certainly, you will receive a companion, like a summary of all the ongoing vacancies. So it's good to receive it in your email if you don't have the discipline to check our webpage recently. So it is a way to make sure that you're really interested and enrolled, register for receiving this newsletter, and then you will receive all these vacancies. Just you can actually check them very fast and see if there is something that interests you.
Okay, from Bonnie, does a candidate have to have their government endorse their nomination? I would say no.
No, no. Yes.
The application is really merit-based, so we base it on various recruitment screening and various interviews, and you would have to be coming in based on merit and if your background fits the position.
Yeah, that's correct. Though you do not need to, and really, it's really merit-based.
Okay, from Maureen. I was interviewed for an IAEA position and never heard anything further. Is that typical, or is the practice to notify unsuccessful candidates? Is there a way to learn what if anything was the deciding factor? I couldn't quite understand the last sentence, but we usually notify all candidates at the end of the process where the selected candidate has accepted the offer of the position, and then we inform all the rest of the application. So we are unable to provide any other information unless the whole process is completed. And then, okay, I'm trying to see other questions. Pedro. Okay, Pedro, could you take this one? Would you, from Susan, would you please review again how the final decision is made and at what level? Thank you.
Well, if I understand correctly, review again how the final decision is made and at what level. So yeah, so you mean once the recommendation is submitted, so basically it goes through this long approval process where a number of people are involved, and then once we have all the comments gathered and all the information consolidated and put it in a standardized report, then it goes to the selecting authority. So the selecting authority are basically for professional positions are our Director General, Mr. Grossi, or our Deputy Director General for Management, Mrs. Highworth. So basically they go through this process. It goes from the panel through the director, so through the change of command in the hiding service, then this joint advisory panel that I explained, and then through HR to the selecting authority. I hope this answers your question. We have also a question, does the agency assist with job placement for spouses of IAEA employees? You want to take that, Jack?
I would say that the spouses would also apply similar way as an external candidate. In our system, it gets flagged to us if it's a spouse or not. So we also make sure that the spouses are not considered for positions in the same unit as their partners.
Yeah.
But do you want to add anything to that?
Thank you. Yeah, that's correct. We do not have a spousal employment policy or procedures in place, but there are a number of international organizations in Vienna, and usually there is, depending, of course, on the background of the spouse, which may differ greatly. So yeah, there is options, but we cannot guarantee that the spouse will get a job in the duty station in Vienna or in any other duty stations. We advise, we can direct the person, the concerned spouse, to certain web pages, but they need to apply as external candidates and they need to go through the process and get a job. So yeah, in short, no, we do not have a spousal employment policies or procedures in place, but it's not impossible to find a job in Vienna, even if you're not German speaking.
Okay. Did we miss any questions? I think we've covered everything, unless anyone has. Oh, there's another one from Lakshman. Is the educational allowance limit per dependent student of employee or for the whole family? Educational allowance?
Yes, this is probably not a
tuition?
question for today. Sorry, it's this. We are actually focusing on the recruitment process. So any questions on allowances, there will be dedicated sessions for this. Actually, yesterday we had a session on allowance. But just for your information, the education grant is only normally only children of staff members are allowed under certain conditions. So they have to be enrolled in full-time education, and they have to be younger than a certain age. So there are a number of conditions. So it's only the kids, either own kids or stepchildren of the staff members. Yeah. So if that answers the question, but the education grant, we're not the experts in that area. Is actually the rules are quite complex. It's not as simple as that, as answering in 2 seconds. Yeah.
I could not join yesterday's session. Is there a way for me to get the recorded video? Maybe Laura can check, because I'm not sure how we are sharing the videos. Would you know, Pedro?
Yes, we are. We are sharing the videos.
Okay.
I don't know exactly how, but all participants will get the videos, Gladys. So don't worry. We will share the recordings with the national authorities in the USA, and they will actually distribute them with among you. You're welcome. So any other questions? So last chance to ask questions. Okay, so if there are no other questions, maybe we can stop the session for today here. Just to thank you very much. It was a pleasure to exchange and be able to present you with our processes. Yeah, thank you very much for your time. I wish you a very pleasant day and best of luck with your applications. Yeah, I don't know if you want to add anything, Jack.
Just thanking everyone for a very fruitful conversation. I thought you had a very interesting question. So good luck, and we hope to review your applications very soon.
Okay, thank you very much. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.
Bye.